Networking and mobility have transformed dramatically in just a few years, shaping your cloud performance, security, application experience, IoT, AI, all of it. And the network isn't behind the scenes anymore. It is very much the experience itself. And to help unpack what's happening across the advanced networking and mobility areas, I'm excited to welcome Graeme Scott, our VP of Network and Mobility, along with Senior Field Solution Engineer Josh Hazelhorst, and Principal Solution Architect Jason Kaufman. Just a mouthful there, but welcome, Graeme, Josh, and Jason. Super excited to have you here. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Cass. Really excited to be here with a couple of the smartest guys that I know, Josh and Kaufman. Kaufman, Haas, welcome to the call. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Glad to be on.
Yeah, so today we're going to break some things down. Today we're doing the State of the Union. So Chandler, you can go ahead and flip it to the next slide there. State of the Union, obviously 2025 was a big year in the network space. A lot changed. We had a lot of good conversations over the course of the year. We're going to highlight some of those and just some of the things that we saw with a lot of the deals that came into us and a lot of these kind of things. So we're going to talk through what happened in 2025 and how we feel like that's going to set us up for 2026. And of course, if you guys know me, I love to do these in lists. So we're going to break this down like a top 10 list, Letterman style, like I have done in the past, have a little bit of fun with it. So here we go. Let's kick things off with the 2026 State of the Union. Trend number one, network brought sexy back. So Cass kind of talked about it at the outset a little bit here, but network kind of became a big deal again in 2025. And Gartner tells us that by 2026, this year, most enterprise workloads will be distributed, latency sensitive, and performance dependent. So why does that matter to you out there as a TA? Well, the network's no longer plumbing. It's now the foundation for things like AI, SaaS performance, CX, and automation, all of these other tools we're doing. And when it fails, when the network fails, businesses feel the impact of that immediately. So let's open this up to Kaufman. We'll start with you, Kaufman, on this one. Where are you seeing customers finally treat the network as a business platform and not just connectivity or plumbing?
Two occasions. Really, it's the user experience. So exactly what you're saying from an AI tool usage or SaaS-based cloud application usage. That's a big one because a lot of customers are finding out that when they were implementing a lot of this stuff, they were trying to figure out how they were being held back by the technology that they had implemented. And a lot of it came back to the network. A lot of them assumed, hey, we're going to be moving a lot of our infrastructure off-site. We don't need to have that big network backbone or something that's latency sensitive and all that stuff that we used to provision because we had all of our infrastructure on site. They found out, hey, we just moved everything, lifted and shifted it. We still need a ton of bandwidth in order to access those applications, even though they aren't here on premise. So we're finding that, and then the meet where you're at component to where everybody wants to enable their employees, whether they're at a coffee shop, they're on the street with a cell phone, or wherever they may be, accessing all those applications. You have to have some form of network, whether it's cellular, Wi-Fi, or if they're at a branch office or something, they need to be able to have that access. So two components there, enablement and then also the experience have brought the sexy back. We still need a pun for it's going to be May if we're sticking to the Justin Timberlake stuff, but we got a few months to figure that one out.
Yeah, Haas, opening it up to you now. I mean, in your opinion, the sexy never left network, right? You've always been the network guy. So how have you seen that sort of just the approach and the mentality change a little bit over the last year?
Yeah, when we moved from I needed the interwebs to look at YouTube videos to my business critical money-making applications actually lived there also, changed the dynamic of, wait a minute, I need hardened, reliable, redundant connections to connect to my money-making applications. It used to be the money-making applications sat in servers in my back closet now, right? It doesn't. Right. The users have no idea where these applications are anymore and frankly don't care. But I need to be able to connect to them, and I need those applications to be 100% up.
Yeah, and I think, AI, we've talked a lot about AI in 2025, right? And a lot of people are, well, hey, AI has sort of necessitated this change. This move to AI and this is everybody looking at AI has really just kind of highlighted how important the network actually is, right, Haas?
Yeah, it's funny. It depends on what that application is, right? If I'm a remote user, if I'm a traveling user, if I'm in sales, if I'm in marketing, if I'm in engineering, my experience used to be it could change and it could have tolerances. Now my experience needs to be the same no matter where I'm at, why I'm at, what device I'm at, what part of the world I'm at. It doesn't matter anymore. I need perfection and I need it all the time. So sorry, Mr. Network Guy, go buy a stick of dirty broadband and say I'm good, check off the box. Boss made me get 100 gig pipe or 100 meg pipe or whatever. Great. No, 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 no. That's not good enough anymore. I need 100% perfection now.
Yeah, yeah, love it. So if you're out there selling network slinging circuits, welcome back to the party. We are now the showcase of the product stack. So love it. Chandler, let's go ahead and move on to our next trend. SD-WAN became the default. So SD-WAN is now the standard architecture for multi-site enterprises, not a differentiator per Gartner. So what that means is that, something that used to be kind of a feature or an add-on is now basically table stakes. So why does this matter? If everyone had SD-WAN, selling SD-WAN no longer creates value, right? So you've got to, do these kind of things. So Kaufman, if SD-WAN is now table stakes, what actually differentiates a WAN conversation today?
A lot of it is what's the most efficient way to get data where it needs to go and the people that are accessing it. SD-WAN is just a component, and Haas always loves to say that SD-WAN is not a product; it's more of an ideology and how a network is designed. So SD-WAN is pretty much part of almost every network that we talk about today. But what's the most efficient way? Are we using like a cloud pop to where we want to minimize the middle mile between the user accessing data here, someplace in Florida, even though the infrastructure is on the West Coast? How do we minimize the latency and control the most of the traffic that goes from, point A to point B? There's many different things that we work with, backbones and, packet-based versus session-based transmission. So there's many different types of SD-WAN out there. A lot of people just attracted from the flexibility component of it and to get away from like MPLS, VPLS, and all that stuff. But in order to differentiate yourself, you really want to look at not only the security components, not to take away from future slides that we have here, but then also what's the most efficient path to make sure that user experience is 100% up and 100% gravy every time they access it.
Yeah. And Haas, you talked about a little bit on our last slide, this idea of being able to access these critical applications at all time, always up. SD-WAN is kind of the way we achieve that in a lot of cases, correct?
It is, but go back to what Kaufman said. SD-WAN is not a thing, right? It's not a blinky light. It's not a box. It's a word that marketing companies came up with to confuse customers to buy things that they don't need. I was on a call last week and the guy said, I hate SD-WAN. Don't even talk to me about SD-WAN, right? I built, multiple point-to-point circuits into my hub, and then I'm the internet gateway out for my users. What do you mean you hate SD-WAN? You just built it, right? That was a piece. SD-WAN is 16 different things. People have to remember, this is a marketing engine, right? It's now about, forget the word and the term. What are you trying to accomplish, and how does that application need to behave?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just this idea of managing the network and making sure that the things that you need access to, you have access to at all times, in all places, is really kind of table stakes now in the environment that most of our customers are living in. Good stuff.
And it's user centric too, though, right, Graeme? If I've got some guy that's rocking on janitorial services, and then other guys that are in my app dev team, does that application need to behave the same for both functions? No. There's a different tolerance level.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And of course, SD-WAN is how we achieve all that. That's how we, whether you build it with a blinking box or whatever, but this idea that, this is now just the way it's done. It's table stakes now, I think, for a lot of these enterprises, I think is really something that we saw change a little bit over the last couple of years. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide right now. Per Gartner, Chandler, slide number 3 there, Chandler. There we go. SASE became a strategy, then a mess, right? So per Gartner, most enterprises now operate security across 4 or more major platforms. So what does that mean? That means that a lot of these IT teams have got a ton of stuff going on with, multiple platforms, multiple portals, multiple panes of glasses that they're using to try and manage their environment. The promise of SASE was to try and simplify that, right? To create it all in an architecture. But we're seeing a lot of customers that are doing this, sort of taking this DIY approach and creating complexity in the environment. Kaufman, talk us through a little bit of that. I know a lot of the conversations you're having, especially, on the security side, are just simplifying a lot of this stuff into this SASE framework.
Yeah, a lot of times, a lot of customers want to have one device for one specific component, and they already have a firewall implemented. And a lot of firewall platforms now have an SD-WAN module, and they've significantly upgraded them in the last 18 months to where they have true failover and failback, and then also blending multiple circuits together. Like they have circuit aggregation and many things that allow them to have a true SD-WAN deployment. But they always figure they need to have another device that does that type of functionality, or they have the SD-WAN appliance and they don't trust the security component inside of it. We're hearing a lot of that on like the VeloCloud, the Meraki stack, surprisingly, the Cisco name brand. There's many different platforms out there to where an IT staff doesn't have the confidence that it could do both functions, but they still say they want to simplify the network and they wonder how they can do that. So SASE infrastructure now, hey, I can take that firewall component, I'll get all the next gen features, protect the network, but then I can also use the same platform and minimize how much complexity we are using in all this configuration and management. And I can simplify that all into one organization. Or now we're seeing the conversation kind of transmit into not only do I need SASE, but I need my remote employees to be able to access everything. And we're kind of getting away from the office set. Hoss, what is that now? SSE? We just dropped the letter there.
Secure Service Edge, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this conversation that is, hey, goes back to, hey, where are the people accessing? Where are they accessing to? And how do we secure everything in the middle to give the best security posture out there from a transport perspective? So yes, it is getting simplified, but it's also opened the gates to there's many other ways that we could do this more efficiently, to where you don't need hardware or you don't need multiple OEM platforms to make something highly effective.
Yeah, right. And terms sound like it's added complexity. Like you mentioned, right? Now we got SSE, right? Secure Service Edge. We had SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. Is there a difference? We had SRA, Secure Remote Access. Was there a difference? Or did marketers just make it sound like there was a difference and it did something different and better? We have other companies say, we were the first to SASE because we had a router that we turned on a zone-based firewall and maybe some URL filtering, and now we're a security element. Okay. Right. So it confuses everybody of, oh, I think I need a SASE thing. SASE can be built. SASE can be bolted on and service chained of other components in my environment. Or SASE could just be a software that lets my remote users access an application securely.
Yeah, I mean, Haas, this is an idea you've shared on a number of calls, right? This, like, SASE is a framework. It's not really a product. And I think this idea of everybody kind of running out and trying to sell SASE has really kind of muddied the waters a little bit here as far as what we're really trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and it's frankly, it's nobody's fault because I'm an end user. I am getting flooded with information. I Google something, I get all kinds of stuff on SASE. And at the end of the day, I probably already have it. I just haven't turned it on.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to topic number 4. And folks, if you're with us there out in the chat, drop something in there for us. Let us know you're listening and let us know you're enjoying it. But this is one that's near and dear to my heart, obviously, as the mobility guy. Wireless became mission critical. Something that used to be kind of off in the background, maybe just a background circuit doing a little bit of work for us. All of a sudden, is now a big part of the picture. Per Cisco, wireless traffic now exceeds wired traffic in most enterprise environments. So what does that mean for you as a TA? When wireless fails, work stops for your customers. It's no longer an accessory, it's primary infrastructure. Let's open up with you on this one, Haas. Where do we see customers still under investing in wireless, even though it's now a business critical component?
Yeah. So again, back to that flow chart of that work order I get on Monday morning. Boss man said, "Go get me some 4G, some 5G as a failover to my failover." Okay, boss, I'll do that. And then WAN 1 goes down, WAN 2 goes down. I flood everything over to 4G, and I can't do any work. Did we not think about how much data was going over WAN 1 and WAN 2 before we decided to do this tiny, tiny little data plan on 4G? Did we not think about, do all applications need to fail over to 4G or just a couple business critical applications. We have to remember, we have to think about this is not just a kick the can down the road and now it's somebody else's problem to transport to this application, right? This is, I've got a plan for this. I've got to understand what my applications are and I've got to understand where those bottlenecks live. And just by sticking in a SIM card into a router, maybe I just created another bottleneck that I didn't see.
Yeah. Kaufman, the thing too, I mean, obviously we think about wireless a lot as a backup, but in a lot of environments, wireless is it. It's the primary. It is what gets everything done. So Kaufman, talk a little bit about how that's changed and the capabilities of wireless networks and how they have grown to meet the demand.
Yeah, the implementation of 5G really changed the landscape, and also the improvements with fixed wireless. So a lot of people use the term fixed wireless synonymously with cellular. I use it as like a point-to-point connection from the ISP. So that fiber in the sky, sub 10 millisecond, gigabit, internet connection, weather permitting and all that stuff. But the line of sight connection, beefing those up to where people using those as a primary connection, or even cellular, because now cellular 5G, you're getting sub 25 milliseconds of latency. You're getting up to a gigabit connection, even sometimes more than that in a high density area. A lot of people use that because you don't have to go through a whole implementation of installing to a DMARC, extending that to the network closet, doing all this stuff in a full project and rollout. All you do is ship somebody a Cradlepoint or a PepLink or one of those little, hockey pucks that's cellular enabled. They plug it in, it connects to the towers, and you're good to go. And then you run everything off that business. So we've been able to next day ship stuff like that out and get somebody enabled in a new office or in a disaster type of thing. And then they're fully enabled to where they can run a lot of their business applications on that environment because it is so latency sensitive now. And it also has, the robustness of almost a hardline connection. Notice the keyword almost, but the technology enables people to do, and it goes back to enabling people to do things where they're at, being in the field, doing something over wireless rather than relying on a hardline connection. A lot of people are experimenting and finding out that they can run on, primary connection via wireless. I mean, how many times does somebody come in saying, hey, I want Starlink, I want to do every location Starlink because it's easy just to implement and I know it's going to work because as long as I'm not part of 20 countries internationally, then we could roll Starlink out there. I mean, there's a lot of technical considerations I know we want to get into, but how many requests do we get for that just because they think it's simple?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing you mentioned that Starlink too is we have to open the eyes of underlying potential risks to those specific critical applications. If you do this, this could happen. Is that tolerable? Is that not tolerable? If it's not tolerable, we need to have a further discussion.
Yeah, it always blows my mind. Like, I've been in this business a little bit and, thinking about what we used to spend on a hardline connection, 1 gig pipe, whatever. Now you can combine a couple of different technologies together with an SD-WAN appliance and create almost, like you said, almost something that's just as robust as those large fiber pipes that we used to, spend so much on even 10 years ago. And just the cost of all this has gone so much down, yet the critical component of the network, as we've talked about, still remains. It's such a big part. It's the key to everything. And it's crazy how it's evolved. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. We're at the halfway point here. Another one that's near and dear to my heart here. Mobility got executive attention. Trend number 5. So a study came out from a group called IDC, The Future of Work, and they say that mobile devices are now the primary interface for frontline workers and customer engagement. And I know from my own personal experience, that is definitely true. Mobility has become a big deal and has moved beyond just sort of phones and easy to get a hold of somebody to true productivity, safety, and CX and enablement of employee activity. So Kaufman, let's start with you on this one. What changed when mobility all of a sudden became a broad level conversation instead of just like an IT task that somebody had to take care of?
It was when the mobile apps that were created to be completely synonymous with what I can access on a desktop. So I can be in the field and access our CRM. I can access anything from like a dispatch application where I can put notes in and do stuff live so I don't have to take notes and then go back and rework it all again at the home office. Mm-hmm. You're enabling somebody to be more efficient by finishing that task where they're at and then get real-time info as well so they can give an educated response if somebody asks them a question or give them an update on something. So enabling the employee to do things where they're at, that has significantly impacted the executive decision to say, hey, we're going to provide these devices. Or we saw in the last 18 months, it was, we're going to provide devices so we can lock it down and enable employees in the field. So people had two devices. And then we said, hey, these devices now are dual SIM, or we can just do a BYOD plan and reimburse people for their own devices. So we pulled back on selling those cellular devices to the employees in the business and just doing a full like reimbursement program. Then companies found out, hey, that's a massive security risk. I have an employee accessing company data for the same thing that they're recording videos on TikTok for. And now we're enabling, somebody loses that device. They don't have the necessary biometrics on it, because we're relying on them to do their own due care and due diligence. And then now we've seen a transmission back into providing those cell phone devices. So now we can install our MDM platforms. We can control everything. So now we need to have a full mobile IT staff in order to do all this stuff, to where it's just been a funny tipsy-topsy curve on the last 18 months on how executives have handled this decision on where they want to put the investment to minimize the risk while enabling employees. It's just a massive roller coaster that's been fun. But a lot of it comes back to, hey, we can have a multi-SIM device and, get a phone number wherever they need to. We can get them wherever device. We can manage the whole thing. That's actually been taken off pretty well lately.
Yeah, they say the average employee has between 2 and 3 devices right now. And I mean, just thinking of myself, right? I got my Meta glasses, I've got my watch, I've got my phone, I've got a tablet, I've got all these things that are running around. It makes sense that all of a sudden the powers that be within the IT stack or your executives are paying more attention to this. And Haas, I know it's a much bigger part of the conversations that you're having. As a guy that's done a lot of network stuff, you're being brought into a lot of mobility conversations over the last year, correct?
Yeah, every day. And I always say that, think about tech as a jumble, 1,000 puzzle piece set. Everything's connected to everything, right? And when mobility came up along, okay, we'll just buy cell phones and tablets for my users, or no, bring your own device because we don't want to worry about it. What is that? Remember, everything's connected to everything. So what did that impact on the food chain? Like Kaufman just said, now I've got a security risk, right? If I'm doing, data classification, I've got secret, top secret, classified information. Can I connect to that information from my laptop in my office? Sure. Can I connect it from my, tablet at the hotel? Maybe, right? Can I connect to that same top secret classified information from a Wi-Fi hotspot in a Starbucks? Absolutely not. How do I control that? Well, now we're talking things like zero trust, right? My point is, since everything is connected to everything and we're always teaching how to go deeper and wider to organizations, I hear the comment all the time, I only do UCaaS and circuits, or I only do circuits and mobility. I don't do cybersecurity. Yes, you do. You absolutely do, right? Bring in your engineers. We'll uncover that because there's 14 more things we have to sell to that customer.
Yeah, and I think for those of you out there who haven't had the mobility conversation, what this should hopefully illustrate is that you've got a receptive ear now within these organizations, right? Executives understand that this is a challenge. The average company spends for every dollar they spend on traditional connectivity, they spend about $1.50 on mobility. So it's becoming a bigger part of everybody's budget, and it's getting the attention of the executive suite. So if you haven't jumped on the mobility bandwagon, if you haven't started asking the questions, now is the time. You have a receptive ear within the organization. So we talked a little bit about security risk, and this is one that I know you guys love to talk about on our next topic here as we cross the halfway point. Really appreciate the chat out there. Keep that going. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you have questions. But Kaufman, this is one you and I have been on multiple calls to talk about. IoT is exploding, right? The number of connected devices is growing so much faster than IT teams have the ability to see or manage them. And it is exposing fragile visibility, security, and governance issues. IoT, talk a little bit about the problems, not just the opportunity, but the problems that's been created by this IoT explosion.
Yeah, I mean, the core component of it is IoT devices, even though they're called smart devices, they're dumb in relative nature to cybersecurity. I can't install an endpoint detection tool on it or an antivirus program to help mitigate a risk or attack to come in from externally. So you got to do side channel monitoring. So you got to do like the scanning, vulnerability patching. You have to isolate the network. And a lot of these companies weren't doing that legacy. you'd be surprised how many companies in emergency services don't isolate their networks through microsegmentation or even segment IoT versus the hard clients, because they just never thought to do that previously. They thought, hey, this is a secure device, nobody can get to it. But now we're seeing all those stories to where you have a full casino going down because somebody hacked the smart sensor in the aquarium or something like that because it didn't go through the necessary precautions in order to protect that network. So now there's guidance that's coming out from a government perspective. The primary infrastructure and all that stuff people are focusing on from a threat level perspective. So IoT networks are starting to get a ton of traction because people are starting to see this is a massive vulnerability and exposure that somebody could get in and completely reorg an entire network. They could get in and block massive things from happening, and it's all critical infrastructure. And a lot of people are building smart appliances, smart manufacturing, smart everything that they want to do. But how are they doing it to where they're limiting their exposure? The quicker you give data to something though that can act on somebody's behalf, the quicker it can become a risk. So how do they do that effectively? Haas, I know you had a ton of these conversations where we've gone back and forth on what's the necessary tool sets and all this stuff and segmentation. What do you think on this? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're talking IoT, I know you're digging into, like, you're in the manufacturing and the warehouses and the SCADA systems, and you're in environmental and energy companies and stuff like that. And those are hardcore use cases, right? I live a lot in retail franchise where I've got, 2,200 locations with 0 IT users, and my one IT guy, my neighbor that knows how to build a web page, right? He went down to Costco and got me a bunch of refrigerator sensors. So I know when my deli meats, go above 45 degrees in my refrigerator. But there's just this concept, and I don't want to throw more complexities out there or more acronyms or words, but actionable intel. If I have 2,200 locations and 64 of my 2,200 locations now have, 64 degrees in my sandwich closet, in my cold closet, what's the actionable intel? What do I do about it? Yeah, great. I knew it went down. I knew I have to throw away food or I'm going to get people sick. But where does that go? So now you've got these hubs that all that data goes into. And then all that data creates actionable intel that then comes back to me. So now I know I have to reorder immediately, or I know what to do. I need that actionable intel. But what people still do is, remember, everything is connected to everything. I'm just going to tell my facilities manager to go buy me a bunch of refrigerator sensors. Yeah, no, you're not. Because is that behind the firewall? Is it protected? Do I have actionable intel? Is it going into a hub? Where does that data live? How do I get that data? What do I do about that data? Oh man, I don't know. Boss man told me to go get some sensors. Yeah. We're missing an element, remember, because everything is connected to everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like, when we talk about cybersecurity alerts, like, the point of IoT is to create this data, to collect the data. But then where does it go and what do you do with it? It's really exposed a lot of these sort of blind spots and like these gaps that we've got within the network. And not even just from a security standpoint, but also from, information flow, like getting data from point A to point B, expose a lot of roadblocks and backlogs and areas where there needs to be some attention paid, right, Kaufman?
Yes, definitely.
Short and sweet. I love it, man.
That was perfect. But
to your point, Graeme, if these things aren't built with a 14 bullet point plan, if I install this, what happens up the food chain? What happens down the food chain? If they're not, then they're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
we need to slow down a little bit, take a step back, and see what is the impact if I do blank.
Yeah, I think the power of these IoT devices is amazing and what they can do and what they can provide. But, adding them to a network that can't support the flow of the information and the flow of the data from point A to point B, again, just creates problems. Like, what's the point of getting the information if you can't get it where you need it and you can't access it and do something with it? Like you said, Haas, actionable intel.
Yeah, the Home Depot story with the smart refrigerators, the Samsung refrigerators, right? Funny story. But what if that was a banking app?
Yeah.
Oh my God. What if that was my home mortgage application? Whoa. Not such a funny story anymore.
Absolutely.
So one of those
All right.
If we're looking at the IoT providers in our portfolio, most of the time the way they implement in order to get around these risks is all the IoT devices have their own cellular card and no Wi-Fi card built into them. So there's no possible way for it to connect to the local network. So When we're talking about segmentation and all this stuff on a network, somebody goes and buys that sensor. If we're providing that service to one of our IoT solutions, it's air gapped from the network entirely without the possibility of having a Wi-Fi card in there. So there's inherent security on all those solutions that we would bring to the table. So I just want to throw that quick insight out there, Graeme, if you don't mind.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to our next one here. Topic number 7, my favorite number 7, by the way. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. You're probably, in fact, sick of hearing about POTS replacement over the last couple of years or last couple of months. We've put out a ton of material on it. But the reason we talk about it so much is because POTS replacement made and will make you, our tech advisors, a ton of money. Made a lot of money in 2025, and there is a lot of money to be made in 2026. Haas, I think you pointed this out at our State of the Union last year when we talked about sort of low-hanging fruit that's out there in the marketplace. You talked about POTS replacement. Little did we know it would become such a hot topic in 2025.
Yeah, let's talk about old days, because we've been talking about this POTS replacement for 15 years, right? It's always been this fear of, oh my God, the FCC is going to deregulate this, and now you don't have to fix things, right? I live in a community way outside of Phoenix, kind of in between Phoenix and Tucson. Everything out here years and years ago was just analog lines, right? Just analog lines underground or over the on the telephone poles. And when there was an issue, you would call into your AT&Ts or whatever. They would send a technician out. They would go into the little gray can and move some wires from this place to that place, and boom, you're fixed. But then I just broke everybody else down the other street in the other neighborhood, right? But who cares, right? Because you got 911 services, and we'll just keep robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, today, there's no trucks coming out. Like, I don't have to come fix your stuff anymore. What are you going to do, right? So yeah, POTS replacement it's been live for 15 years, but it's real live now, because that truck that comes out and fixes my issue because a cable broke or a little plastic detent pin busted, I don't have to come fix it anymore. What are you going to do about it? You got to make money still, right? We got to get off that.
Yeah. And Kaufman, RTA has closed some pretty big deals in the POTS replacement space. A lot of opportunity still out there. Talk a little bit about some of the ones that you've been involved in.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's just customers kicking the can down because they never believed that it was actually going to be shut off. And now we're actually at that point of no return to where exactly what Haas was saying, they no longer have to support. They don't have to support in the future. Like, now is the actual time to where they can say no. So we're starting to see the customers starting to look at this because they're like, hey, not only did our bill increase from 3 to 4x, but then also I have no support on here and we have to go, fix this stuff on our own. That collectively together is starting to make them, to give them the initiative to go finally do something about it. So I'm part of multiple opportunities to where you think a random university or a random assisted living facility or something like that needs a whole PRI of lines, or they need, a university needs 2,000 to 3,000 lines, just randomly, stuff like that comes in. Hotels, hospitals, any type, or even retail environments still using POTS lines for their credit card feeds and all that stuff. So you'll find some low-hanging fruit out there on people that, just continually kick the can because they're like, I'll just take whatever comes in because it's not something that seems super pressing. But we're at that point now to where, they're going to lose all their transmission if they don't do something about it. So there's numerous opportunities out there that we're in and day out, and multiple different technologies that we could bring in that have the battery backups that follow all the compliances, that has, the cellular gateways that can hit multiple different cellular technologies for redundancy, and then ultimately convert that from digital analog transmission to hit, make it the user experience doesn't change. It's just what the networking closet looks like.
Yeah.
But there's still gotchas.
Switch to the next slide, Chandler.
Around there.
Yeah, switch to the next slide, Chandler, as we're talking about it. We had a lot of comments in the chat here asking about this. Shameless plug here for our report that we put out a couple of months ago. It has been an extremely popular guide, so if you want to go ahead and download that, we continually update it. But sorry, Haas, I cut you off there. What were you saying there before I...
No, you're good. I was just saying there's gotchas, right? Like, we literally, right before this call, had a question come into our Ask an Engineering group, right? Of, hey, I need to do a POTS in a box world, but I don't want it to be over internet. Okay.
Right.
Then how are we going to do this? Because it's not a magic ball, right? This is not a magician with fairy dust. It's a box that needs to plug into something, and I need to move data from point A to point B. How do I do this without the interwebs? Yeah, I don't, right? It's not magic. So there's still things. And Jason mentioned certification, health and life safety. If I want to do a POTS replacement because I have, 3 analog telephone lines and maybe cans on a string, that's one thing. But what if this is for health and life safety, like elevators and alarms and whatever? That's different. The scenario is the same, POTS in a box solutions, but it's a different solution now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the key is, where do we find these opportunities, right? If you think about it, POTS have been around for a long time. And so usually you're going to see it in customers that have some level of maturity, right? The business that just started 2 years ago probably doesn't have any POTS lines, but the one that's been around for 15 years, I can guarantee you, has a bunch. And the key is helping those customers come up with a plan, because at some point, very soon, they're going to be shut off. We're already starting to hear dates from AT&T and some of the others where they're like, hey, beyond October, AT&T, no moves, add changes for POTS lines, right? So they're not repairing them, as you said, Haas. And I think, customers are going to be caught if they're not making a plan. Last part I want to leave with you guys before we switch topics here. Usually there's a lot of money to be saved. Once they start digging in on these POTS lines, they find out, hey, we're not even using half of these things, right? A bunch of them have been, not even working for a couple of months or a couple of years, and we're still paying bills. So a lot of times it creates some cost savings that you can use for other things. So a really good thing. Make sure you're talking about it with your customers, and finding out, hey, do we have any old phone lines kicking around the businesses that we can look at and make some changes? So
Hey, Graeme, that's a great point. This is one of the things we actually use to open up budgets, to where somebody's paying X for a certain amount of line. Once they figure out, hey, we're just going to move all these lines over to POTS replacement, and then they start tracing them to figure out what they're being used for. You find out a lot of these have just been unused, and they've just been paying the bill because they never really looked into it and took the time. But ultimately, it's been opening up, like that 23 channel PRI scenario. A lot of SMBs have 23 channel PRIs. They're paying, sometimes up to $100 per port, or even more than that. And we could save them a lot of money just by going to a SIP to PRI implementation, easy implementation. I'm going to use the quotes easy because you never want to use that word as an engineer. Yeah, I know Haas is grinning in his seat right now, but ultimately it opens up budget to go procure other things. Do they have a cybersecurity initiative? Do they have a cloud migration? Do they have something? Do they want to install SASE? I got to use the network term. Sorry, Graeme talked about some other bit. Yeah. But it ultimately opens up the budget to do other things and technology initiatives, and you could be the partner on all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff, guys. If you want more on that, let us know. All of us are happy to talk more about POTS and those opportunities for you guys. But let's go ahead and move on to our next topic here. Number 8, customers want more from less. And what do I mean by that? Well, CIO.com did an analysis where they surveyed a bunch of IT leaders, and the average enterprise now manage dozens of IT and security tools across an average of 30 vendors in an enterprise environment. Now, that's not as extreme in smaller businesses, but still, this idea that we're managing all of these vendors across our environment, customers don't want to do that anymore. Complexity is the enemy, not always cost. Customers are overwhelmed by dashboards, contracts, and then, hey, who do I call when I've got a problem with this? So let's start with you on this one, Haas. We're seeing a ton of customers wanting to simplify their vendor environment and get out of this vendor sprawl that we see so much, more from less.
Yeah. If anybody's on this call that does, cybersecurity or helps customers build formal frameworks, CMMC, NIST, ISO, SIS 18, safeguards rule, or whatever, right? We get this point where we get to the world of vendor risk management, right? I have too many cooks in the kitchen, too many devices. I've service chained too many things. One doesn't collate with another. One collapses another. One breaks another in the food chain. Remember, everything is connected to everything, right? When we get on these discovery calls, most of the time, part of that discovery session is, what have you already invested in, Mr. Customer? We don't want to have to rip and replace if we don't want to. Why? One, that creates value to the customer. Now he loves you because you're not trying to sell him something. And two, you may have overlapping technologies in your environment that we can remove one and just turn on a service on the other, and it didn't cost you any money, and it saved you money. And like Jason said earlier, right, opened up budget, right? These are the values that we have, that the people that you compete with, the guys on this call, your CDW reps and your Insight reps or whatever, they have no idea what the heck I just said. But we need to not only protect the customer, we need to protect their initial investment so they can go to the CFO and get budget approved, right? If we're just trying to buy something else, that's not going to work. They want more from less, but a lot of times they already have it. They just don't know the capability of the existing stuff they have.
Yeah. And Kaufman, there was always this idea, I think, from an enterprise standpoint, hey, let's go out and get the best of breed in every area we need. And that's kind of created a bit of a mess at a lot of these larger customers.
Yeah, they're finding out it's much harder to retain personnel that you train up to be that, focus that SME on that one specific product, that an MSP will go hire them and pay them for more. So now they're left, figuring out, hey, do I need to train up somebody else to be, cross-platform, or do I need to go hire somebody? So it's a continual revolving door on the personnel that are supposed to, support this stuff. So in the scenario we were talking about earlier, and just like Haas was saying with service chaining, you got a Meraki SD-WAN device, you got a Fortinet or a Palo Alto firewall, you have Juniper switches. Those are 3 different platforms all in one network that somebody has to log into the portal. They have to know what they're configuring. They have to be familiar with it and the subject matter expert. The CLI or the command line interface language of a Juniper is different from a Cisco. Same with the Fortinet. They all use same type of Linux type language, but there's differences between where things are located and how to interact and make changes. So knowing those intricacies adds a lot of complexity, and we're, consolidating everything into one platform makes it easier to manage and also less resources you need to do it. That's why we're seeing a lot in the code management space. We're seeing a lot in the vendor consolidation. I mean, look at the M&A activity that's going on in the IT landscape. The big providers are seeing this as well, and they're starting to see, hey, we can build these different modules, or we can go buy it and just integrate it with our platform. Now we have all these different use cases that we can put under one umbrella. So they're starting to see that as well. Companies are starting to transition from best of breed, putting the best in the individual locations, and use best of suite to where, hey, I can get good enough, but I can make it easier to manage and more simplify my network. And that's what's going to allow me to scale quicker as we progress.
Yeah, and we hear it all the time, right? Is I think my value is saving my customer money. What if you could save your customer time?
Yeah.
Because that is the most valuable asset in an organization. It's not I saved him 38 cents a month. No. I saved him 14 hours a week. That's money.
Yeah. And it's sometimes hard to quantify that. I get it, but huge. And, I'm going to kind of segue into our next topic, Kaufman, because I think you really bridged it very, very well. Topic number 9 that we saw a lot of: managed services became the default. So Kaufman, in your answer to our last one, you sort of touched on it. These, hey, we train somebody up to use this thing and then bang, they're gone to somebody else. This used to be the world of MSPs, but now we've added a lot of these services to our portfolio, and customers need this. There's an ongoing skills shortage and operational fatigue that are happening within organizations, and they're just like, to heck with it. Let's outsource it. And over the last year or so, we've added a ton of these options to the portfolio, MSP type services, where you have sort of a managed environment instead of customers trying to do it themselves. So Kaufman, why don't you talk a little bit about sort of the growth there? And, a lot of customers are, with the challenges you talked about, they're just like, to heck with it. I'm just going to outsource this whole thing.
Yeah, they're finally starting to realize that, hey, it's cheaper to leverage a team of folks and pay as the economies of scale rather than going to hire somebody. Now that salaries are starting to increase with inflation and all that stuff, you're finding an IT analyst position or a network admin, you're not getting them much cheaper than $50,000-$60,000 a year. So that equates to at minimum $4K a month. For an SMB that has a couple locations and a few endpoints, they can get a full co-managed solution or a full managed platform with the software applications, with the hardware as a service, to where they never have to worry about hardware breaking or procuring new hardware again on a refresh. They can just outsource that entire thing and have a team of people that work 24/7 on their behalf and a phone number to call, that one throat to hug that we were talking about earlier. They could do that to where they don't have to worry about vacation time, somebody getting sick, or going to buy all the licensing, buy all the hardware, and then paying somebody to manage it. They could do that in a more cost-effective way and minimal headaches. And they're finding it to be much more advantageous to do that because they're saving so much money. It's much cheaper to, instead of doing a $50,000-$60,000 a year salary employee, with benefits and all those other risks that come with that. It's much cheaper to do it with as a service and pay less than $1,000 a month for everything included. So it's a no-brainer when they look at and they sit down and look at the math of it, rather than, hey, I'm going to have more control by having my own IT staff. No, like you're adding a lot of risk to the company by doing it that way. Look at it from a services perspective, and you're going to just go go worry about the business. Everything else is handled here.
Haas, anything to add there? I know you're involved in a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, and then Kaufman mentioned M&As, right? We've got customers all the time that are buying, 15 of these and 27 of those and 38 of these. And I got Sophoses and WatchGuards and Checkpoints and Cisco's. And I went out and I hired the smartest engineer on the world. I hired Jason Kaufman. Well, first of all, I'm not getting Kaufman for 65 grand a year. Second of all,
Right, yeah.
I only have one. So Kaufman, let's just say this, you're my IT manager, you're my dude. I have 244 locations with 16 different firewalls, and somebody recognized the CPU spike on Thursday at midnight. The heck are you going to do about it, Kaufman? You're the smartest dude in the world, I know, but you just don't have the time. You don't have the eyeballs. You're not 24/7, 365 eyes on glass. I've got to outsource this. I don't have a choice.
Yeah, good stuff here. So topic number 10 here. And I think this is one that you're going to see us leaning into over the course of the year. Our education is kind of building around this now. This idea that tech advisors who lead with insight win the day. Unfortunately, our slide got cut off there. I guess I used too big a font. But tech advisors who lead with insight won the day. And what does that mean? This idea of selling, outcome-based selling business outcomes, not just showing up with a price, not just showing up with, hey, I got this thing and it cost you this. Haas, you talked about it a little bit earlier. It's not about just saving money anymore, 38 cents. It's about, hey, how can I deliver an outcome for the business that saves you time, that makes you more productive, all of these things that you care about as an enterprise. It's about delivering value there, right?
Yeah, cost savings is a byproduct. If you're leading with cost savings, you're losing because hard cost is not savings. I'll give you an example. Working with a customer right now, he's a Ubiquiti fan, loves his Ubiquiti Dream Machines. And every one of his locations, he couldn't get secondary internet, so he wants to hang a cradle point off it, get a 4G SIM in there, and boom, there's his failover, right? But how do I make sure not all applications, if WAN 1 fails, only business critical applications go over to LTE? Oh, crud. Yeah, you didn't save any money because now we got to rip and replace. We got to buy different devices because your Ubiquiti Dream Machines won't do this. But I led with, I can save you money selling you cheaper firewalls. That wasn't the outcome he was looking for. The outcome he was looking for was, what do I do if WAN 1 fails?
Yeah.
Cost savings was irrelevant in the conversation.
Yeah. When you're talking business critical applications, it's not always about cost. And Kaufman, I know you when you go through the process of discovery with a lot of the clients that you talk to, budget really doesn't come up a lot of times until the very end. And often it's just okay, tell me how much this is. It's a done deal. Like, it's not an obstacle.
Yeah, if you solve their problem, generally the budget opens up a little bit more because there's a lot of things between direct cost comparison on, hey, this firewall is going to be cheaper than this firewall, but what does this solution allow me to do that this other one doesn't? Back to what Haas was saying, time is the biggest saver out of all of it. So yeah, we can look at a line item SKUs and say, yes, this firewall is cheaper than this one, but if I have a team that's focusing and this is not enabling our sales team to go produce revenue or our operations team to go optimize something or carry some form of task, then ultimately the business is suffering because of a technology saving. So when we come in, the biggest question we're always asking is why? Why do you perceive that as a solution that you're looking for? Because you're not going to solve this, this, and this. If you do something this way, then provide those insights and give them that that solution that, hey, this is going to enable you and your employees to do this, this, and this. Now you're expanding the business to say, hey, there's much more cost allocation and indirect and cost that we need to allocate here to see which move is the best for us here. And I do have a question for everybody on the call. How many people tried scrolling down to see what the last word in that sentence is?
Yeah, that's my bad, guys. Sorry about that.
And
Handler, my man, I was relying on you to sanity check me on that, but all good. Well, folks, if you like this conversation, this value conversation, this selling business outcomes conversation, then our Beyond the Solution trainings are for you. As Kosh just put in the chat there, we've got one coming up on Thursday in network, but we're doing this across all the product lines where we lead with sales business outcomes, sales-based outcomes. So good good content for those of you guys who want to sort of go a little deeper and wider on this topic of conversation. So I had a couple of bonus topics here, but I think in the interest of time, I'm just really going to touch on them briefly. So Chandler, if you go to the next one of the things you guys have heard me talk about this on some of the hits before, but energy is a big deal now, right? The cost of power, it's such a huge component of what our customers are spending. If you're not asking about this, if you're not having a conversation about energy, then you should be. And I'm not saying you want to lead with this information, but just asking, hey, can I take a look at your power bills? I might be able to save you some money here, is opening up a tremendous amount of opportunity. So we've got some hits in the library that you can look up that dive into this a little bit deeper. Any of us on this call would be happy to have that conversation with you as well. But energy is something we want to make sure that folks are talking about, asking the questions, a huge part of what people are spending. Also, next slide. If you're not talking about MDUs, if you're not in the MDU conversation, there's a lot going on there right now. It used to kind of be off in its own little world and, its own stuff. But because of the mixed use developments that are happening over the country, you've got sort of these conversations of enterprise technologies and everything are blending together, making this an area where our advisors are competing and succeeding. So if you've got some of these opportunities in your portfolio, let us know. We're happy to help you there. And I'm working on a guide to come out on MDU that you guys should see later this year. So let's go ahead and open it up for some questions now. We've only got a few minutes left. Cass, you want to highlight a couple of the big ones that we had in the chat there? Obviously, we covered a ton of ground today with a lot of good points. So anything there we kind of missed that we maybe want to dive into a little bit deeper in our last few minutes?
Yeah, actually, I do have one question here that kind of came in through Q&A, but it said, where did customers struggle most with networking and mobility decisions in 2025? And how can advisors help them avoid those roadblocks in 2026?
Kaufman, you want to take that one?
Sorry, it broke up on me. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. It was just like, where did customers struggle the most in 2025 when it came to these type of discussions? And how can advisors help them avoid those roadblocks in 2026?
A lot of it was vendor lock-in and figuring out, hey, they only thought there was one trajectory and it was just going to the primary carrier, seeing what was the best one that they could hit most of their employees with for the best case scenario. So is it Verizon towers for 75% of the employees? Is it T-Mobile or AT&T? But there are other avenues to where you can have a blend of all the different carriers. So knowing all the different capabilities and services that are out there, not only the cellular aggregation, but not only now the IT team has to figure out what MDM solution are they going to leverage. How do they make sure that expenses aren't going to go through the roof with somebody using their company provided cell phone to watch YouTube videos all the time on the road or Netflix or something? How can they manage all of that effectively? And the team, figuring out that the team doesn't have to do that. There's plenty of services out there that could do this cost effectively to where they can even save money while implementing these services. A lot of it is around the education of that. And also, what risks are they inherently bringing in by enabling employees to leverage either their provided cell phones or company provided cell phones, and how to lock that down.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that kind of what we talked about here at the conclusion of the webinar, where this outcome-based selling is really the key, right? Not focusing on the outcome, focusing on the products, the speeds and feeds, the bells and whistles, whatever you want to call it. That has been something that caused a lot of deals to vanish from our TAs portfolios there, as focusing on pricing, those kind of things. Like the outcomes is really where we want to be focused. Haas, last word to you. Anything you want to add there?
No, I'm with you guys 100% right. Luckily, we have a team of engineers. Even if I have a question, I can lean on the Kaufmans and the J-Dubs and the Trevors or the whatever. Clients don't have that. A lot of times, I'm the system admin. I get to work. I get a work order. Go buy me blank and find me the cheapest solution you can. What are you trying to accomplish? A lot of times, that system admin has no idea what he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to accomplish, get my boss off my back. He told me to buy a switch.
Right.
But why? Oh, because I'm going to add 35 more users. Oh, okay. Now we have a project. Why are we doing this? How are we doing it? How are they? We need to understand that, right? And end users just don't have that, right? So they go Google it and they go buy the wrong thing every time. You've heard me say a million times, 100% of companies will implement the correct solution in the incorrect sequence 100% of the time.
Yeah.
They need help. And that's what we do. That's our value, right?
That's a nice Hazel stat to leave with.
Hazel stat. Love it.